It is raining. So we will have, as our wonderful musical accompaniment of the universe and the environment, a little drone of rain in the background. With any luck, that won't be too distracting. I think I can talk over it. We are starting a new Go show. This one will take us a little while to go through because it is one of the most important or famous ones, the opening of the eyes. And my preface to it goes like this. Part 1. I include this major treatise of Nichiren in this book of the Mandala and Gohonzon. This most emphatically makes evident the reasoning I have, or I base, my assertions in practice and Buddhism and in the foreword of this book, which we already read. The language makes use of much of the historical scholarship and expedient means rhetoric we have become familiar with. For this reason, I feel there are two things I wish to call your attention to. The first is the concept of evil, or that we see throughout Buddhist literature, evil or demons. Whether this is an English expedient from translation or similar to the original meanings, whatever the case, I cannot know. However, it's clear to me that all the references to evil, demons, etc., are identification of any forces or influences in one's environment, other people, or our own thoughts, that halt us or otherwise obscure our life of enlightenment or Buddhahood. All right? Second is the concept of time, or more to the point, timelessness of the universe. In Buddhism, the universe is understood to be an instantiation unto itself, so that all that occurs to us as experience in this realm, the universe, is bounded by no time. Words like beginningless or terms like time without beginning come from this, not unlike cosmology, universe frame of reference for all our existence. I just watched a YouTube video this morning from one of my favorite scientists, Sabina Hossenfelder, about time travel, or faster than the speed of light. Not time travel, that's my layer over it, but her video was about specifically anything faster than the speed of light, which has historically on Hollywood and TV shows and even many science speakers talking about the time paradoxes, and there's all kinds of movies about it, ending your own birth or being ahead, sending a message and then going back in time and being ahead of sending the message. All of that crock is based on the mathematical extrapolations from Einstein's special relativity. But here's the thing, and Sabina is so wonderful for doing this. She points out that mathematically all of that is fun material to muse upon. But that mathematics occurs in a perfect vacuum, which in reality doesn't exist, never did. So mathematically, it's interesting. It illuminates many things, but in actual practice, that's simply not the case. And we've already discussed how the speed of light isn't about the speed of light, it's about the speed of causality. That's why the C. But at any rate, the reason the speed of light, or light specifically, is identified or labeled for this speed, this 300 million meters per second, approximately, is because photons are a particle wave, something that has no mass. It's just energy. And this is why it's convenient to call it that. But that is actually the crux of the matter, because we live in a universe that is not massless, and that a perfect vacuum does not exist. And when it comes to talking about time is always two things. Number one, it's your experience of it, which is different than my experience of it, because that's what in science is called a frame of reference. And so in general relativity, Einstein makes the most important point in that time is experienced specific to the frame of reference, or the observer, you might say, but not just the observer, because frame of reference is wherever the point of measurement occurs, this speed of causality is the same. And if we have different points of reference, simplification. I watch an aircraft fly through the air. I can say that you, my friend on the airplane, is traveling at the speed of the aircraft. So I experience you moving through time at 450 miles per hour. But you don't. You're static on the plane. You don't feel yourself moving at 450 miles per hour. And if you get up and run to the other end of the plane from where you are, your speed of running, let's say 10 miles per hour, will be to me 460 miles per hour, because I will add it to the speed of the plane. But to you, it's just 10 miles an hour. That's what you experience. See, that's frame of reference, or frame. Experiential frame. Yes? Working frame. So that can be confusing, but it's not hard to understand what I just explained, is it? What may be more untypical to think about, something I've talked about before, is that sitting here speaking to you, you and I would both agree that I'm not moving, that I'm stationary. But yeah, you've already figured it out, right? We're moving at 300 meters per second, or whatever the hell it is, on a planet that's spinning, that's orbiting the sun, which is orbiting the Milky Way, the center of our galaxy, which is being drawn toward the great attractor, whatever that is. We haven't figured it out yet. As the universe is expanding, it's just, the speed is hard, if not impossible, to calculate. We are moving. And in Buddhism, we're all about that momentum, aren't we? And so when we talk in Buddhism about attachment, right, the Four Noble Truths, the cravings are our propagation of ownership, attachment of stuff. That's samsara, the samsaric condition of the way we experience life as a physical realm, or one of the many realms, yeah? But when we awaken our Buddha-ness, when we penetrate our Gohonzon mind, that frame of reference, instead of being earthbound and physical, becomes universal. And so the frame of reference of our enlightenment isn't bound by the narrow frame of reference of our freight train of karma. We are outside that perception of time. And the time reference point for us is the entirety of the universe, and that is unchanging. Everything within it is going through evolutions and changing and experiencing moments of time. But in Buddhahood, it all is plain to see. There is no past, present, and future. There is experiencing within our own particular time frame. And that has us enveloped in all this drama. But from outside of it, peering upon it, everything doing exactly that same drama becomes very obvious and easily understood, and an overwhelming compassion for liberating everything from the worries of that frame of reference becomes our motivation in life. It's an interesting way to think about our Buddhist practice, is it not? So, this, I will make the argument, is what the opening of the eyes is about. That within the teachings of Shakyamuni's enlightenment, we come to a point where the great aha moment, that renge, is this very, I don't know why I'm having, anyway, I apologize. I don't mean to be rude. A lot of gas bubbles for some reason this morning. Anyway, let's see how in medieval Japan, Nichiren is discussing this very involved, difficult to understand, even for us now, topic, right? The wonderful and difficult to understand law of life, of the engine of life, of this time conundrum, if you will. He begins, there are three categories of people that all human beings should respect. They are the sovereign, right? Our larger protector, mentors, everything from bodhisattvas like Nichiren to the leaders of our protecting our borders and providing economic stability. All of those, we're all responsible for those things, but we have people in positions of leadership that are supposed to help navigate us that condition on a larger scale. So we should have great respect for those people, right? If not more accurately, their positions. The sovereign isn't a particular person, it's the role of sovereignty, yes? The teacher, which is everything around us, the things that demonstrate, reflect for us our own life conditions, not the typical way to think of a teacher, right? Don't think authoritarian. Buddhism is all about non-authoritarian. Teachers are those who give us the opportunity to awaken to our own mechanisms of understanding and thought, the realms that we hang on to or transmigrate, yes? And the parent, even though it's listed here as three different people, is a guidance counselor, teacher, and a sovereign on a smaller scale, right? So you could say these are identified as three sorts, sovereign, teacher, and parent, but in a true sense, they're just varying degrees or identifications or closeness, frames of reference of the same thing, same influence. There are three types of doctrines that are to be studied. They are Confucianism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism. So in a broad stroke, broad sense, one could identify Confucianism as generally a philosophy of how to be with one another, dignity, humanity. Brahmanism, how to be within the larger framework of the environment. And Buddhism, how to be completely expressed individually within these other two, as an influence to the other two. Buddhism is about the mind, right? Attitude and intent. Confucianism, more about how we should conduct socially with attitude and intent that upholds the dignity of that effort. And Brahmanism, not forgetting that we, humans with sentient minds, operate within the larger universe, the larger environment, the larger, beyond society, we have a responsibility to life itself. And what is that, and how does it interact in our lives? So, once again, these three are just a matter of scope, frame of reference, yes? Confucianism, he goes on to say, describes the three sovereigns, the 5 emperors and the 3 kings, whom it calls the honorable ones of heaven. The great examples, if you will. The word heaven gets thrown around. Again, this is English bias, whatever. These men are depicted as the heads of the government, officials, and the bridges for the populace. In other words, what I was saying is social constructs, yeah? In the age before the 3 sovereigns, people were no better than birds and beasts in that they did not even know their own who their own fathers were. We can imagine a time long before societies or civilization, right, when human beings were scarcely more organized than groups of apes, right? They just ran amok in groups, either familial or even before tribes, which tribes really are our first rudimentary civilizations, aren't they? But from the time of the 5 emperors on, they came to know who their fathers and mothers were, treating them according to the dictates of filial piety, family relationships, and extended family relationships. Thus, Chung Hua served his father with reverence, though the latter was stubborn and hard-headed. Although the governor of Pei, after he became the emperor, continued to pay great respect to his father, the venerable Sire. King Wu of the Chao dynasty made a wooden image of his father, the Earl of the West, and Ting Lan fashioned a statue of his mother. All of these men are models of filial piety. So Nichiren is using familiar stories, folklore of China and Japan, he does this all the time, in order to reach people's core understanding culturally of their identities, personally and culturally, nationally, so on. But he's not wrong to point out that this is the domain of Confucianism, a Chinese philosopher, right? The High Minister Pikan, seeing that the Yin dynasty was on the path to ruin, strongly admonished the ruler, though it cost him his head. Hung Yen, finding that his lord Duke Yi had been killed, cut open his own stomach and inserted the duke's liver in it before he died. These men may serve as models of loyalty. There's a lot of background to all these stories, and for instance, the thing about the liver, kidneys, these are organs specifically identified in Chinese medicine as being the vitality, containing the vitality, the essence, you might say, of individual human beings. So there's a lot of symbolism here, right? Yin Shou was the teacher of Emperor Yao. Wu Cheng was the teacher of Emperor Shun. Dai Kung Wan was the teacher of King Wen, and Lao Tzu which you may know, or as a reference, Lao Tzu, right? One of the books that he wrote that has a lot of popularity in the West is The Art of War, right? Lao Tzu was the teacher of Confucius. These teachers are known as the four sages. Even the honorable ones of heaven bow their heads to them in respect, and all people press their palms together in reverence. Sages such as these have left behind writings that run to over 3,000 volumes in such works as the Three Records, the Five Canons, and the Three Histories. But all these writings, in the end, do not advance beyond the three mysteries. The first of the three mysteries is being. Right? These writings discuss our interactions with one another, but the three mysteries, one being being, they're not deconstructed. They're just taken as. This is the principle taught by Duke Chao and others. The second mystery is non-being. Seen in a primitive way, non-being is just the opposite of being. It ain't. It is or it ain't. Right? Which was expounded by Lao Tzu. Absence. A little bit more complex, yeah? The third is both being and non-being, which is the mystery set forth by Chuang Tzu. Mystery denotes darkness. Some say that if we ask what existed before our ancestors were born, we will find that life was born out of the primal force, while others declare that eminence and ignobility, joy and sorrow, right and wrong, gain and loss occur simply as part of the natural order. From this evolves something I've pointed out in the past, where there's a mindset of samsaric humans that life is happening to us, right? Which Buddhism blows apart. But this is the default position. At some point, even these great scholars give up in a way, and this is just the way it is. It is the way it is. And it's like a stopping point where I just accept this is your life, this is what happens to you. These are theories that are cleverly argued, but that fail to take cognizance of either the past or the future. Now, here's this time thing. Mystery, as we've seen, means darkness or obscurity. And it is for this reason that it is called mystery. It is a theory that deals with matters only in terms of the present. In other words, causality isn't understood here. Just experience in this moment, so we have this amorphous thing happening to us that we now are experiencing, and we have no idea how it propels us into the future. Speaking in terms of the present, the Confucians declare that one should abide by the principles of benevolence and righteousness, and thereby ensure safety to oneself and peace and order to the state. If one departs from these principles, they say, then one's family will be doomed and one's house overthrown, because you won't be going with the flow. But although the wise and the worthies who preach this doctrine are acclaimed as sages, in their lack of knowledge about the past, they are like ordinary people unable to see their own backs, and in their understanding about the future, they are like a blind man unable to see what lies before them, because they don't account for cause and effect. They're just experiencing right here in the now without understanding how the now became the now, and how that energy, as its momentum carries it through time, will undoubtedly unfold. Make sense? If, in terms of the present, one brings order to one's family, carries out the demands of filial piety, and strong resolve and conviction to fully practice the 5 consistent virtues, then one's associates will respect one, and one's name will become known throughout the country. Now, that's an interesting statement. Going back to what I said earlier, the sovereign, the teacher, the parent, all actually the same thing, but in a different frame of reference. Isn't Nichiren now describing what one of us becomes as a result of doing these behavioral constructs correctly? We ourselves are sovereign teacher and parent. Do we behave in that regard? This is something Buddhism asks that these others don't really delve into. They just take it as read. If there is a worthy ruler on the throne, he will invite such a person to become his minister or his teacher. There it is. Or may even cede his position to him. Point made. Heaven too will come to protect and watch over such a person. In other words, one's environment, Brahmanism, will mirror the behavior of one such person who behaves as a sovereign teacher and parent. Your environment mirrors your freight train of karma, behavior, action, instantiation. Such were the so-called 5 elders who gathered about and assisted King Wu of Chao dynasty, or the 28 generals of Emperor Kwang Wu of the latter Han dynasty, who were likened to the 28 constellations of the sky. But since such persons know nothing about the past or future, they cannot assist their parents, their sovereign, or their teacher in making provisions for their future lives, and are therefore unable to repay the debt they owe them. Such persons are not true worthies or sages. Everything is a temporal, moment-to-moment, constantly having to re-engage and prove their worthiness. In other words, the idea of extending merit into the future is a very ephemeral one. There wasn't a solid understanding that if you make a certain cause, the effect is undeniable. That relationship wasn't understood. Confucius declared that there are no worthies or sages in his country, but that in the land to the west there was one named Buddha, who was a sage. This indicates that non-Buddhist texts should be regarded as a first step toward Buddhist doctrine. We know this. Shakyamuni said this, is study broadly, right? And Nichiren is now saying it for us to understand that studying Confucianism, for instance, is not a non-Buddhist thing to do, because ultimately, through these other avenues of understanding the human experience, we will ultimately come to reason with Buddhism, which is the ultimate self-realizing teaching, yes? Confucius first taught propriety and music so that when Buddhist scriptures were brought to China, the concepts of the precepts, meditation, wisdom could be more readily grasped. He taught the ideals of a ruler and minister so that the distinctions between a superior and a subordinate, so that the importance of filial piety could be made clear, he taught the ideal of parenthood so that the importance of filial piety could be appreciated, and he explained the ideal of the teacher so that people might learn to follow or to absorb, to appreciate being taught, being given the opportunity to self-realize, which is what teaching actually is, yes? The great teacher Miao Lo says, quote, "The propagation of Buddhism truly depends on this. First, the teachings on propriety and music were set forth, and later, the true way was introduced." End quote. So what Nichiren is saying here is that Miao Lo was referencing Confucianism as it relates to Buddhism. Tendai states, quote, "In the Golden Light Sutra, it is recorded that all the good teachings that exist in the world derive from this sutra. To have a profound knowledge of this world is itself Buddhism." Right? To understand the moment as it relates to causality, that karmic freight train, that momentum, that a moment isn't alone in space, like in special relativity, in a perfect vacuum where nothing is moving. To understand general relativity, that even if the perception of no movement is understood to be an illusion, because nothing is static, nothing is non-moving, nothing is permanent. Everything is constantly moving, evolving, changing. And therefore, every moment is constructed of previous moments. And the next moment will be constructed by the instantiations of this moment, including its obstacles and its energy, obviously, and its influences. Brings us into the next moment, a comprehensive understanding of this moment as an instantiation of momentum, moving, creating time-space itself, the experience of the engine of life. In Great Concentration and Insight, we read, quote, "I, the Buddha, have dispatched the 3 sages to educate the land of China," end quote. In the annotations on Great Concentration and Insight, we read, quote, "The practice of the Pure Law Sutra states that Bodhisattva Moonlight appeared in that land under the name Yen Yue. Bodhisattva Bright Pure appeared there as Confucius, and Bodhisattva Kashyapa appeared as Lao Tzu." So are these incarnations? They're embodiments. They're the expedient means concept, mental concepts, life concepts explored in the story of Bodhisattva whatever were exemplified by these real men in history. Since the sutra is speaking from the point of view of India, it refers to China as that land, end quote. My little dog is, you hear her? She's dreaming. I'm glad she's sleeping. She's usually very nervous in the rain. Okay, and we'll end with this next paragraph, because I don't want to take your whole day here. Secondly, we come to the non-Buddhist teachings of India. In Brahmanism, we find the 2 deities, Shiva, who has 3 eyes and 8 arms, and Vishnu. They are hailed as the loving father and compassionate mother of all living beings, and are also called the honorable ones of heaven and sovereigns. I don't know about heaven, maybe the heavens, maybe our surroundings, our environment, prefer that than the interpretation heaven. It's a very Western charged word. We're the honorable ones of the environment. Much more accurate statement. And sovereigns. In addition, there are three men, Kapila, Uluka, and Rishaba, who are known as the three ascetics. These ascetics lived somewhere around 800 years before the time of the Buddha. The teachings expounded by the three ascetics are known as the four Vedas and number 60,000. And one of the things, if you'll remember the story of Siddhartha, as he worked diligently on getting this answer on how we could live this life fully, there must be a way. One of the things that motivated him was the situation in India of just hundreds, perhaps thousands of local derivations and folklores and invented gods and deities and prayers to this, prayers to that, all sorts of mysticism. And, he studied the Vedas, and the Vedic knowledge, the Brahmanism in his day, was so polluted by these invented stories over time of these different areas and cultures, subcultures, and caste system groups of belief systems. It was unrecognizable. Any wisdom that was in the original texts from the three ascetics was completely trashed by so much storytelling that the meanings were lost. People just wandered through praying to forces they didn't understand, had no really sense of responsibility. To those people, it was absolutely that life was put upon them, that they had no agency. And to Siddhartha, and certainly once he was enlightened, from a Buddha knowing, understanding, that was abhorrent. That was the very essence of suffering. You can see how the Four Noble Truths grew from that experience, yeah? So, we'll go a little bit further here. Later, in the time of Buddha, there were 6 non-Buddhist teachers who studied and transmitted these non-Buddhist scriptures and acted as tutors to the kings of the 5 regions of India. Their teachings split into 95 or 96 different lines, forming school after school. The banners of their pride were raised higher than the heavens, where there is neither thought nor no thought, and their dogmatic rigidity was harder than metal or stone. All sorts of fire and brimstone, if you will. But in their skill and depth of understanding, they surpassed anything known in Confucianism. They were able to perceive 2, 3, or even 7 existences, a period of 80,000 kalpas into the past, and likewise they knew what would happen 80,000 kalpas in the future. Well, at least that's what they proselytized, right? They all considered themselves prophets. As the fundamental principle of their doctrine, some of these schools taught that cause produce effects, others taught that causes do not produce effects, while still others taught that causes both do and do not produce effects. Such were the fundamental principles of these non-Buddhist schools. Again, anything under the sun could occur to you because you were not in control. The quintessential victim. The devout followers of all the non-Buddhist teachings observe the 5 precepts and the 10 good precepts, practice the 10 kinds of meditation that is still accompanied by outflows. Everything became ritual, right? I'll be good, so, the gods will be appeased and I'll be able to eat, and right? And we see this throughout the world's cultures and the history of humanity, yes? And ascending to the worlds of form and formlessness, have confidence that they have attained nirvana when they reach the highest of the heavens. somehow if I'm just subordinate and subservient enough, I'll be graced with the gates of heaven. Religion. The same exact formula from India to Germany to Alaska to the world over. You can call it Muslim, you can call it Islam, you can call it Christianity, you can call it non-Christianity, you can call it Judea or Judaism or even Kabbalah, whatever. By any other name, the mechanism is the same. If you just become subservient enough, whatever that mechanism of subservience is, when you die, the tally sheet will come up and you either get in or you don't. What a horrific mechanism of living one's life in. Just know that Buddhism is not that. It is the antithesis of that. Only in Buddhism do we discover, do we know with absolute confidence that this life occurs by us. That this life is ours to create and to fully be instantiated, manifest in. That everything we experience is of our own energies, manifestations, constructs. That is so immensely powerful that we miss it. We forget it. I'll continue a little further. I know I'm going along, but I just want to finish this paragraph. But although they make their way upward bit by bit like an inchworm, they fall back from the heaven where there is neither thought nor no thought, and descend instead into the three evil paths, right? The three evil paths in Buddhism, not in theirs, right? Hell, hunger, animality. They're just churning away, being animals in this life, not without realizing the power of their own minds. Not a single one succeeds in remaining on the level of the heavens, even if they have moments of, right? Rapture. It's fleeting. Though they have confidence that once having attained that level, they will never descend from it, it's not the reality. They don't experience that. They keep hoping. Each approves and practices the doctrines taught by his teacher and firmly abides by them. Thus, some of them bathe 3 times a day in the Ganges, even on cold winter days, while others pull out their hairs on their head, fling themselves against rocks, expose themselves to fire, burn their bodies, or go about stark naked. These devotional practices somehow self-immolation becomes the order of the day. I got to get rid of this human body, this humanness, so that I can transcend and become enlightened. That's why it's so heinous when you hear about Buddhists who do this. What the hell are you doing? That's not Buddhism. Again, there are those who have confidence they can gain good fortune by sacrificing many horses, or who burn grasses and trees, or make obeisance to every tree they encounter. That is not the way to enlightenment. That is you wrestling with your ego and your attachments. Only a Buddhist can see this clearly. Erroneous teachings such as these are too numerous to be counted. And on that note, that is where we'll take up the next video. So I hope you can see in this Gosho, Nichiren is delving deeply into the nature of humanity, our history, and how Buddhism evolves from a desperate need to know truth. What's really going on here? How do we live life fully without all this cacophony of self-hatred and immolation and power struggles and, oh my goodness, what is going on? And above all, this victimhood, as though we have no power to change it. All we can do is try to appease outside forces that we do not understand. That's mysticism. That's nuts. And you and I live in a time where it's absolutely ridiculous to live that way. That's infantile, childish thinking. Because when you're a child, you don't know. Buddhism says, you can know. Let me show you so that you can see for yourself how wondrous this moment is and how you have constructed it and will continue to construct it with your attitude and your intent. With your mind alone, all of this life, all of the life is manifest in you in every moment, and you can be amazed by it. You are not a victim. You have a choice. And that choice occurs in your mind. Be Buddha. Be enlightened. Be all-knowing. Be in the universe in every moment of your life. Sounds huge because it is, but it's not difficult. We have a tool to instantiate it immediately, albeit with all of this study and education and confidence. With that knowledge, Buddha wisdom, we can instantiate it. Not knowing, more difficult, right? All right, I will leave you with that. Thank you. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for being here. Please, please, please help us in our Bodhisattva act for yourself, for all of us. Expand this Sangha. Like, subscribe. Super, super important to help expand our Sangha, get this teaching out to more and more people. Make use of the entire resource, the search on the homepage of this channel for concepts. Go to threefoldlotus.com. Lots of answers on the core study page there that you can use for your own study and to help you to show others. The ebooks, which you can order online, very affordable, no shipping, you get it immediately. Let me know if there are any books of the library that you can look at on lulu.com for this channel and see if there are books in there that you would like to see in an e-format. So I'll add them to that page. The podcasts that you can listen to, you can get those wherever you get your podcast. The Buddhahood Podcast, the name of the podcast, right? What am I missing? The Mandala Store or cafepress.com/Gohonzon. Get yourself a proper Nichiren digital copy of a Nichiren inscribed Gohonzon, not somebody else's version. We're not practicing theirs. We're practicing Nichiren's tool. The bookstore. Anyway, all of you are supporting your practice, the practice of others. Thank you for that. If you can, patrons through Patreon, where all of these videos also reside, or direct with PayPal. Please don't hesitate, if you can, to support us financially. There's a cost incurred in all this. You all know that. Or if you can't, but, purchasing ebooks and so forth, same thing. So I appreciate your participation. I appreciate your study. I deeply appreciate your practice and your patronage. Take care of your health, and I'll see you in the next one.